What do you view as an appropriate and healthy ratio of federal to state dollars in Missouri's annual budget?
I think that the state of Missouri should be able to generate enough revenue within the state through taxes without relying on outside funds. I think Missouri's scheduled to get $4 billion in stimulus money, and $2 billion of that is flexible for the lawmakers to play around with. Some of the things they've already spent it on is $150,000 to repair Jay Nixon's airplane, $500,000 to print the official manual of the state of Missouri. These things don't seem like dire things that really need to be rescued or funded with federal money. It reminds me of a guy goes into a hospital and he's got a bullet wound and he's bleeding. And if the federal government were in charge, they'd just infuse him with more blood without taking care of the actual wound. So I'd like to see them focus more on the cause, not the symptoms.
Okay. If the vote were taken today, would you vote for the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act?
I would not. I think it's been used a lot to reward mismanagement of state governments and corporations. I've seen areas like in my home, it's an interchange off 169 in Briarcliff. The interchange was just fine prior, but now that the American Reinvestment Act has happened, we're getting a beautiful, unneeded interchange that's costing the taxpayers millions of dollars.
Okay. Would you vote to end farm subsidy programs?
Yes. I think the farm, we pay out about $20 billion a year in farm subsidies, and the beneficiaries of those subsidies have changed. So has the agriculture in America. In the 1930s, 25% of Americans lived on some 6 million farms. Now, in contrast, in the 1990s, 150,000 large farms were producing 75% of the farm work, and only 2% of the population lived on farms. The number one subsidized crop is corn, and the biggest thing with that, it's manufacturing artificially low prices. It's actually bad incentive for consumers. There's an overflux of high fructose corn syrup, cane sugars actually being exchanged for the cheap corn syrup, and it's being filtered in cheap products and kind of affecting the nutrition of Americans.
Okay. This is a little bit of a convoluted question, and I apologize. To what extent do you believe that in an enlightened democratic society, the citizenry should be bound by any type of financial and social commitment to support the greater good of all Americans?
I think the government-compelled charity is actually having the opposite effect as it was intended to have. The action that gets rewarded gets repeated. I think our welfare system's kind of unfair for a lot of people. The taxpayer fit the bill for it, and then it puts people into a situation where they're hopelessly entangled. They don't have hope for getting out, and it creates a dependency. I think individuals who can't support themselves through the job market should once again rely on family, community, churches, private charities to fill the gap and help build the connection with the community and the compassion for one another.
Okay. And finally, how would you assess today's political culture in D.C., and how can you be a productive representative of Missouri within this framework? How will you measure your own success?
It's a very chaotic environment in there. I think it's very hurtful to Americans. It's an us versus them mentality where the Republican and Democratic politicians are too busy fighting with each other to actually come up with any creative solutions for the Americans' problems. Me as a senator, I will work between party lines. I think if more credibility was given to independent elected politicians, they're more likely to think outside of the box instead of regurgitating the same solutions the two parties do every year after year. Now is probably the time to stop voting for the lesser of two evils and vote Libertarian. We can actually help break up some of the stagnation and see if there's maybe an alternative between the Republican and Democratic parties. They have created the status quo, and I don't think they intend to change it.
Well, Mr. Dine, I very much appreciate your time.
Thank you.